Patch 13.1 is upon us with some nerfs, some buffs, and other changes too, including a mini rework for Jax. For nerfs, we have Aatrox, whose maximum health damage on his passive is being reduced. Also, the passive healing on his E when he ultimates, and the bonus movement speed when using ultimate is being slightly reduced in the early game and further reduced as the game goes on. The next nerf goes to Mundo, who's losing 40 base health, half an armor per level up, and the bonus attack damage on his E is being reduced by 0.5% at all levels. Following this, we have Fiora, who's losing AD scaling on both her Q and her passive. Next, we have Cassante, who's losing 5 base movement speed. The damage on his passive is being hugely reduced, losing 5 damage at all levels, and the W will now deal significantly less maximum health damage. Following this, we have Yuumi, whose Q base damage is being massively reduced as the ability is leveled up. And the final nerf goes to Zeri, who's losing a little bit of attack damage per level, and her Q base damage is also being slightly reduced as it's leveled. The first buff goes to Jace, who's getting 3 extra base AD, and in hammer form his Q gets slightly more damage early and a good chunk more when leveled, along with the W in hammer form getting a flat 10 damage per second increase. Following this, we have Lissandra, who's getting 6 more health per level, the slow on her Q is being increased, and her W has a 2-second less cooldown at all ranks. This is pretty significant as it means she can probably now use it multiple times in a teamfight. Next, we have Shaco, whose Q is having a mana cost reduction from 60 down to 40, and the backstab crit will now deal more damage. In addition, the AD scaling on his E is being increased, helping out his late game. Following this, we have Sion, who's gaining 40 base health and 20 flat damage on his Q. Next, we have Twisted Fate, where his Q will have a 5-second cooldown when fully leveled up, and the AP ratios on his red and blue cards from his W have been increased by a good amount. And the final buff goes to Xayah, who's getting a small base attack speed increase. We also have an adjustment in Rammus, who's losing 3 base attack damage and 20 base health. In addition, they're messing around with the numbers for the armor he gets when using W, but there shouldn't be any significant change when using W. And of course, we have Jax's mini rework. Firstly, his Q will no longer scale with any AP, his E now has higher base damage when leveled, and instead of scaling with AD and dealing physical damage, it will now scale with his target's maximum health, AP, and magic damage. In addition, the bonus damage per attack dodged will now scale with base damage rather than total damage. And the largest change is his ultimate. It will now have a longer cooldown at levels 6 and 11, and the third hit's passive damage is now being reduced by 20 flat at all levels, along with having its AP ratio reduced. However, it has a new active where he swings his weapon around, dealing damage to all nearby enemies. If he hits a champion, he gains a large amount of armor, and 60% of the armor gained is magic resist for 8 seconds. And during these 8 seconds, his passive damage applies every second attack now instead of every third. We also have a good number of item changes, starting with Axiom Arc gaining an additional 8 lethality. Horizon Focus is getting a decent buff with an additional 15 AP for free. Jax Show will now cost 3200 gold, and the Resilience will now stack with 20% bonus resist rather than 15% of total resist, and the Drain now has flat damage and scales with bonus health rather than maximum health. All of this means you need to buy other tank items to make it effective. Rod of Ages now gives an additional 100 health, and will proc the movement speed buff even more, with the movement speed buff being increased to 35% over 3 seconds and will decay much slower. Archangels is going up to 3000 gold, where it gains 20 AP, 10 ability haste, and even more AP per mana. And when evolved, instead of healing per mana spent, you now get a shield when below 30% health, and you gain a massive amount of AP per mana. Winter's Approach will be 100 gold cheaper and give 50 extra health, and the Rune Legend Tenacity gets a large nerf.